He woke up from his human body and was excited to be in the form of a ghost. Being invisible, he slowly started overhearing what other people were saying and even began entering the women's showers, experiencing a kind of power he had never felt before. It all starts on one evening. After a late-night date, Kyle walked the girl back to her car. Even though he was drowning in debt, she noticed something was off and casually offers him her credit card, like she wanted to help him out. But Kyle, trying to play it cool, told her not to worry. Then she invited him over.
"Wanna come and stay at my place tonight?"
But instead of going, the idiot bailed and went back home to study. He opened his books and started studying like it was finals week. That's when he suddenly heard creepy noises outside his window. Assuming it was nothing, he started looking around, but a man in a hoodie stood silently behind him, as if waiting for something. Kyle turned around and freaked out to see Jared, the sketchy assistant of a local dealer, and Kyle owed this dude some serious money. He tried to talk his way out, said he just needed more time, but Jared only laughed. Then he leaned in and told Kyle that if he didn't cough up the cash soon, he might just swing by and pay a visit to Kyle's girlfriend. That hit a nerve. Kyle shoved him back and told him to stay the hell away from her. But Jared just smirked and said,
"I'm just the messenger. Get us the money."
Totally freaked out and desperate to get that debt off his back, Kyle looked for any job he could find and ended up as a janitor. His first client was this creepy old house, and when he knocked, no one answered. So he peeked in and saw a chair rocking by itself. That's when an old woman just appeared out of nowhere and nearly made him jump out of his skin. She stared at him like he didn't belong there, so he showed her his business card. Without a word, she pointed toward the basement. Kyle walked down and found the place a complete mess, broken stuff everywhere. He got to work, cleaning up junk and trying to ignore the weird smell. Just as he was wrapping up, he noticed something hidden under a pile of trash. It was a coffin. Yeah, a legit creepy wooden coffin. He got curious and was about to check it out when the old woman popped up behind him again, almost like she'd been watching the whole time. She told him the thing was part of her dead husband's dumb collection and told him to dump it, burn it, or bury it. Whatever he does, the old woman warns him to never use it. She looked real and very serious about it.
"Promise me you'll watch them bury it."
But Kyle didn't listen. He figured one man's trash could be another man's treasure. So he took a few pictures, posted an ad online, and started cleaning the thing, hoping to sell it for quick money. But while scrubbing the inside, he accidentally pushed some weird little button. Suddenly, a hidden mechanism clicked open inside the coffin. It looked like a messed up music box with strange gears and cogs, and it didn't feel right at all. Kyle quickly leaves to fetch his roommate Sutton, who is in a wheelchair. Sutton is also confused by the coffin, and together they find a key trapped inside the mechanism. Kyle places the key under the magnifying lens and discovers the name, Von Tristan, 1952, engraved on it. Sutton finds where the key goes, and together they insert it and turn it clockwise. The mechanism starts to work and plays music like something out of a horror movie. They are both confused about why someone would put a music box in a coffin. The next morning, Kyle made his way to the library to meet up with his friend Platt, who happened to be a total history nerd. Platt didn't waste any time and told him about Von Tristan, the name engraved on the key. He wasn't just some weird inventor, he was seriously twisted. Platt tells him to think of him like a creepy, evil version of Leonardo da Vinci. Back in the day, Von Tristan built torture machines and earned himself the nickname the Devil's Mechanic.
Called him the Devil's Craftsman.
As he got older, the man completely lost it, got obsessed with death and the afterlife, and locked himself away from the world. That's when he built something crazy. This mechanical coffin is meant to let someone experience death without actually dying. He called it the Ghost Machine. Kyle took the book back home to his garage and started putting the pieces together. It turned out that Sutton had already restored the mechanism inside the coffin by replacing the busted parts. Kyle compared the pictures in the book with the coffin sitting in his garage, and he and Sutton realized something insane. The coffin was the actual ghost machine, the one from the 15th century. People had seen old sketches of it, but nobody had ever found the real thing, until now. The coffin could be worth a fortune, maybe millions, and Kyle got pumped thinking about how selling it could wipe out his debt in one shot. After they calmed down, Kyle explained how the machine worked and casually suggested they give it a test run. But there was no way either of them was going to climb into that creepy thing, so they decided to use something less risky, Sutton's goldfish. They put the fishbowl inside the coffin, used the key, and turned the ghost machine on. As the strange, haunting music started playing, they watched in shock as the goldfish floated lifeless in the water. But the moment the music stopped, the fish twitched, flipped around, and came back to life like nothing happened. They both just stood there stunned. The thing had actually worked.
I can't believe it.
They figured they'd tell Platt later, but right then, Kyle's girlfriend Julie showed up at the house. She missed him and wanted to hang out. As they were together, she started getting irritated. She hated Kyle sharing the house with Sutton, who seemed creepy and was always hanging around outside the door. She told Kyle they should rent a place of their own, somewhere quiet, but Kyle knew he couldn't afford that. He actually liked living with Sutton, who wasn't just smart and helpful with school stuff, but also split the rent. That evening, Platt showed up at Kyle's place, curious to see the spirit machine for himself. The three friends stood around the creepy coffin, super curious but also kind of freaking out because none of them wanted to be the first one to mess with something that could literally kill them for a minute. After a bit of nervous silence, Kyle stepped forward.
It's gotta be me.
Hey, do I have to remind you this was built by an expert in torture machines?
With some help from the devil.
Sutton grabbed the video camera and made sure he was recording everything. He didn't want to miss a single second. Platt slowly turned the key 3 times. That was supposed to keep him dead for just 1 minute. The second the device activated, weird sparks of electricity shot out and reached Kyle's head. His body went still like a statue and electric flashes lit up his eyes. Suddenly, Kyle was no longer in the garage. He was standing somewhere else, floating and completely shocked. He is confused and excited about what he has become, kind of spooky, but calm. When he looked down, he saw his own lifeless body in the coffin. He waved his hand in front of Sutton and realized he was like a ghost. He even stuck his hand through Sutton's head just to prove it, but his friends could not feel his presence. In the real world, Platt totally panicked when he saw Kyle lying there with no movement, but Sutton stayed cool and told him to wait for the music to stop. As soon as the creepy music box tune ended, Kyle's eyes popped open. He gasped for air and sat up, grinning like a maniac. He said it was wild, unreal, and something they all had to try.
You're there, but you're not.
You mean like a dream?
No, it's more like being invisible.
Platt looked like he wanted to run away, but deep down he couldn't resist. So he laid down in the coffin next, nervous but ready. They started the ghost machine again and set the timer for 1 minute. Platt's body froze and just like Kyle, he slipped into the spirit world. But instead of doing anything cool, he just wandered around the city, completely clueless on how to use his ghost powers. He found himself walking along a railway track, and when a huge train roared straight through him, it made him realize that if he still had a body, he would have been dead for real. He snapped back into his body as the music stopped and was freaking out, explaining it was evil and dangerous. Being the brain of the group, he realized something big. They weren't just dreaming. This machine was pulling them to the edge of death but not fully pushing them over. These were real near-death experiences. They were coming back from the other side. Fired up by all this, Sutton rolled up in his wheelchair and asked the guys to help him into the coffin. Platt tried to talk him out of it, said it was reckless and stupid, especially for someone who couldn't move around easily. But Sutton didn't care. He needed to know the truth, wondering if it was real or just one big shared dream. Before they started the machine again, Kyle scribbled a quick note and placed it by the fish tank. He told Sutton to read the message while in ghost mode and remember what it said. If he could do that, then they would know for sure this was not just imagination. Once Sutton entered the spirit world, the very first thing that hit him was the shock that he could walk again, and it felt unreal, but amazing, like he had broken out of a cage. While Kyle kept an eye on the controls, everything was smooth until Julie showed up without warning. Kyle had to step away to talk to her, so he left Platt in charge of watching over Sutton. But Kyle had no idea that this wasn't going to be a serious visit. Julie had found out about the shady stuff Kyle had been doing behind her back, especially how he'd secretly been using her credit card to cover his debts, and she was furious. And right then, Sutton's ghost just floated nearby, silently watching the mess unfold. He followed Julie all the way to her car, feeling a strange connection growing inside him, and just when he reached out to touch her face, the haunting music from the coffin cut off, and in a blink, he got sucked back into his real body. The guys asked Sutton if he saw the note they had left by the tank to prove it wasn't just a dream, but Sutton completely ignored that. Instead, he revealed something huge. He exposed Kyle's financial scams and casually mentioned that Julie had kicked Platt's scooter, leaving everyone stunned. Later, the three sat down and realized they weren't just dealing with some cool science project anymore. This machine, this spirit coffin thing, could be worth a fortune to the right buyer, but it also put a giant target on their backs. The police, criminals, even collectors could come for it, and not all of them would ask nicely. Platt begged them not to mess with the coffin until he could figure out how it really worked and what exactly it was doing to their minds and bodies. While Platt got serious, Sutton couldn't let go of what he felt in the spirit world. He just had to know if it meant anything real. Even though he needed a wheelchair in the real world, he decided to test his legs. He pushed himself up and actually stood for a second before crashing down hard, frustrated and hurt but insisting that he could feel something, like a pulse of life in his legs for a moment. Kyle, not being gentle about it, scolded him, and that only made Sutton more upset. Later, Platt headed back to the library to start his deep dive into whatever this spirit tech was really doing. On his way in, he spotted what looked like a homeless guy near the entrance and politely asked him to move aside, trying not to make it a big deal. But something didn't sit right. A few steps later, Platt heard something behind him, and when he turned around, his face went pale. That thing wasn't human. It looked like a ghost or a creature pulled straight out of a nightmare. Freaked out, Platt ran into the building, and when he looked back, the thing had vanished without a trace. But that ghost thing wasn't done yet. Later, it showed up near Kyle too, creeping him out big time, though he brushed it off, thinking maybe it was just stress or some leftover hallucination from the coffin. Things got worse when Julie FaceTimed Kyle, this time sounding calm but distant. She told him they needed a break, that they both had to figure out what they really wanted, and Kyle tried not to lose it emotionally. He grabbed a cigarette, trying to distract himself, but even that didn't hit the same anymore. All he could think about was the coffin, the one thing that made him feel powerful, weightless, and alive in a weird way. And then he did something reckless. He went back to the garage without telling anyone, turned the key a few more times than usual, and laid down in the coffin again, wanting more time in the spirit world. Once he crossed over, Kyle wandered through the quiet city streets, invisible and unstoppable. He saw a store about to close for the night, and out of nowhere, he got this wild idea. He followed the store owner silently, watched him close up, and memorized the alarm code, the door code, even the safe code. If Kyle wanted to, he could become the perfect criminal and no one would ever see him coming. The moment Kyle woke up in his body, he didn't waste a second. He got dressed fast, ready to pull off the robbery. Using the codes he memorized during his ghost walk, he slipped inside the store like he belonged there, without making a sound and not drawing a single eye. No cops would ever show up, no alarms will go off, and in just a few minutes, Kyle had the cash in his bag and even found a revolver, stuffing that too like it was part of the plan all along. With the loot secured, he drove straight to Marcus's place, ready to settle old debts and maybe score something heavier. But the moment he reached the trailer, things got weird. His car started acting like it was possessed, its headlights flickered, wipers flipping on by themselves, and for a second, Kyle honestly thought the spirits were coming for him. Turns out it was just Marcus messing with him and laughing at his panic. Marcus tried offering him some white powder, expecting him to give in, but Kyle wasn't interested this time. He left empty-handed. Back in his car, Kyle lit a cigarette, but it didn't hit like it used to. The buzz was gone, replaced by the bitter taste of burned lungs and yellow teeth, and suddenly it felt more like punishment than pleasure. At the same time, back at home, Sutton decided he couldn't resist the spirit machine anymore. He went under again, and once in the afterlife, his ghost made a beeline for Julie's apartment. Something dark had started growing inside him, something he didn't want to admit, and it was pulling him toward his best friend's girlfriend. Floating into her room like some invisible shadow, Sutton watched her sleep in silence. He leaned in close, way too close, and kissed her without her knowing, then snapped back into his body like nothing happened. Julie woke up, feeling something strange on her lips but wasn't able to explain it. Back in the real world, Sutton was training his body like he was trying to outrun guilt. He noticed Kyle sneaking back into the house, stashing drugs and a revolver under his bed like it was totally normal. Sutton watched from the shadows. Meanwhile, Platt had buried himself in research, trying to crack the science behind the coffin. While digging through the mad scientist's old biography and scribbled notes, he finally realized that the secret didn't just lie in the machine, it was hiding inside the music. That creepy melody was the key, and that's when he noticed blood trickling from his nose. Something was wrong. The next morning, Platt called Kyle and told him everything. He explained that the melody coming from the coffin was no ordinary sound. It was a forbidden interval banned by medieval churches because they believed it was linked to Satan. He needed to record that sound and study it, maybe break the whole thing down before it took them all too far. Once again, Platt begged his friends not to use the machine until he got back. That evening, Platt finally showed up to check on them. Hoping it wasn't too late, he looked them in the eye and asked if they were okay, if anything strange had happened.
You guys haven't had any problems since we used the coffin last night? Nosebleeds, headaches, that sort of thing?
But both Kyle and Sutton lied. They acted normal, denied the hallucinations, and stayed quiet about their obsessions. But Platt could see it in their faces. They were hooked, fully addicted to the power that the coffin gave them, and it terrified him. He pleaded one last time for them to resist, to stay away from it before it consumed them completely. But Kyle had already made up his mind. When Platt said he needed to record the sound, Kyle just laughed it off. He said tonight he was going deep, the longest trip yet, and nobody was stopping him. Before Platt could argue, Kyle lay down inside the coffin, his fists clenched tight, daring anyone to get in his way. Once Kyle slipped back into the afterlife, he went straight to Marcus, and what he saw there twisted his stomach. Marcus was doing whatever he wanted, like he ruled the place, and one of the guys even gave up his girlfriend just to get some of that white powder. Kyle stood there, watching it all unfold, burning with rage as Marcus acted like some untouchable monster. Kyle decided he was done just standing around. He was going to take them down. So he tracked down Jared, Marcus's partner in crime, and followed him to figure out exactly where they were hiding their stash. Back in the real world, Kyle came out of the coffin all wired up and told his friends he had seen the gates of heaven and that he lived for this kind of thrill. But Platt wasn't feeling the high. Something already felt off to him. He noticed the first terrifying ripple caused by their experiments.
You guys might want to take a look at something.
Sutton's pet fish was floating dead in its bowl, but Sutton didn't flinch. He just laughed it off like it was nothing.
Goldfish die all the time.
and he couldn't wait to jump back into the coffin, even if it was only for a few minutes. The moment Sutton entered the spirit world again, he drifted straight to the gym where Julie was training. He followed her around the ring, invisible and weirdly obsessed. But he didn't stop there. When she went to the women's showers, he followed like a total creep, sneaking around, watching all the girls, especially Julie, completely unaware that he was spying on them. It was disgusting and twisted, but Sutton didn't feel guilt, not even a little. Then Julie's phone rang. It was Kyle. He wanted to meet and try to fix things. Julie's face lit up the second she heard his voice. She felt relieved and even smiled a little. But this hit Sutton hard. Something inside him snapped. He couldn't handle it. He got so mad that he punched a locker in the shower, but the punch somehow carried over into the real world. That moment changed something. Sutton felt a weird power growing inside him, and when he woke up in his body again, Kyle asked where he had gone. Sutton didn't tell the truth. He just said he went to the movies, but his friends didn't buy it. Kyle and Platt started teasing him, saying he looked way too excited. Sutton got angry and stormed out, unable to hide his frustration.
I didn't think you could get those.
Later that night, Platt returned to the library, determined to crack the mystery of the music that came from the coffin. He plugged in the recording, turned up the volume, and picked apart the frequencies. That's when he found it, a strange, low sound buried so deep that it was barely even there. But it wasn't just noise, it had power. That sound was probably what killed Sutton's fish. Just to test it, Platt cranked the volume and played it again. A fly nearby dropped dead instantly. Platt stared at it, unable to process what he was seeing. He realized something huge. This wasn't just one creepy sound. There was more. Something else was buried inside the coffin, something that gave it power over the living. The next morning, Kyle showed up at a quiet cafe to meet Julie. He was trying to fix things, telling her he had already cleared her credit card debt and that everything was under control now, but something about him felt off. He wasn't the same Kyle she used to know. He was intense, restless, and kind of scary, and the more he tried to convince her, the more uncomfortable she got. She pointed it out, and instead of calming down, Kyle lost it and started raising his voice, getting angry right in the middle of the cafe like he was ready to explode. That's when Platt's call came in, right in the middle of the argument. Kyle picked up, and Platt sounded serious. He said the spirit machine wasn't what they thought it was. It didn't let their souls leave their bodies like they believed. What it really did was mess with their brains in ways they didn't fully understand yet. Sure, it gave Sutton a moment of hope when he could feel something in his legs, but that didn't mean it was safe. Platt said it might be slowly destroying their brain cells.
When you use the coffin, you are not having an out-of-body experience. Your brain is dead.
While Kyle listened to this mind-blowing news, Julie had already left. She walked out, done with the whole situation. Kyle didn't chase after her. He was spinning out and furious. That rage drove him somewhere dangerous. He made his way to the storage area where Marcus hid the restricted substances and stole everything he could find. Meanwhile, Marcus and Jared were freaking out. The stash was gone and they had no clue who was behind it. They knew they were screwed if they didn't find the thief soon. At the same time, Platt kept diving deeper into the mystery of the machine. He set up a live camera and started watching himself carefully while using it. That's when he saw it, a tiny needle mark on the back of his neck. The machine was doing something physical too, something invasive. And before he could process that fully, the thing returned. That terrifying spirit he'd seen before came creeping back again, appearing right there in the room like it had been waiting all along. The fear hit Platt like a truck. He heard a noise from the next room and walked over to check, but the second he stepped out, the spirit stood right in front of him. His heart nearly exploded from the shock. In a panic, he crawled under a table hoping it would protect him, but he knew deep down it was useless. Hiding wouldn't save him. He had to do something, so started typing a letter to Kyle, warning him about everything. But the spirit wasn't done. It came at him again, faster this time, forcing Platt to run. He sprinted through the hall, trying to get away, but the spirit was relentless. It slammed into him, pushed him hard, and Platt went tumbling down the stairs. His body hit the ground, killing him instantly. That evening, Kyle and Sutton were done waiting for Platt. They couldn't sit still anymore. Their addiction had taken over, so they decided to mess with the spirit machine again, even though they knew it was dangerous. But as they were getting started, Sutton suddenly started bleeding from his nose. It freaked Kyle out because now he couldn't ignore it anymore. Something was seriously wrong, and maybe Platt had been right the whole time. Maybe this machine really was killing them. But Kyle was still too deep in it to back out now. He laid himself down inside the coffin again, ready to return to the afterlife no matter the cost. Once Kyle's spirit slipped out of his body, he rushed straight to Marcus's trailer. What he saw there disgusted him. Marcus and Jared were no longer selling real drugs. They were making the white powder with cheap garbage to stretch it out and make more money. This new mix was practically poison. It could kill anyone who took even a small amount. Kyle watched in horror as some desperate guy came by, bought the stuff, and walked away to use it. Kyle tried to scream at him, tried to warn him, but it was no use as he was just a ghost. The man couldn't hear a thing. Kyle begged Sutton to pull him out of the spirit world and bring him back, but nothing happened. All he could do was watch helplessly as the drug took its toll and the man died right there in front of him. Back in the real world, Sutton had no intention of watching Kyle. He had other plans. He grabbed a tape and left Kyle behind, heading straight to Julie's house. Sutton came to expose Kyle and give Julie a gift, a small box that Kyle had been using to hide drugs. He told her Kyle would never change and tried to make her see that Kyle was dangerous. Then, right there in the moment, Sutton poured out his heart.
I love you, Julie.
But Julie ended it right there.
What are you afraid of?
She wasn't rejecting him because of his wheelchair. She just didn't feel that way. To her, Sutton was a friend and nothing more. That rejection really got to Sutton. He snapped. He told Julie he wasn't the same person anymore and showed her the strength the machine had given him. He could now move his legs. He grabbed Julie and tried to kiss her, desperate to prove he was worthy. But Julie pulled away and told him the truth. She loved Kyle and always would, no matter what. Crushed, Sutton walked out into the street, furious and confused, only to be confronted by the spirit again. It didn't move or speak and just watched. Sutton froze with pure dread. Meanwhile, Kyle had returned to his body and wasted no time. Still shaken from what he saw, he tracked down the house of the man who had taken the poison drugs. Inside, he found the man dead. Kyle snapped, and in a twisted act of revenge, he dipped his finger in the dead man's blood and scrawled Marcus's trailer license plate number on the floor. But things only got darker from there. When Kyle got home, the hallucinations came back worse than ever. The spirit of death started following his mind, never letting him rest. Then the police knocked on his door and told him Platt was dead. Before he died, Platt had written a letter. He never sent it, but it was a warning. He had begged Kyle to destroy the cursed spirit machine. It was the only way to end this nightmare, the only chance they had to escape the madness that had already taken too much from all of them. Back at home, Kyle had finally had enough. He was done with the nightmares, the hallucinations, and the horror. He grabbed an axe and marched straight to the spirit machine, ready to destroy it once and for all. But Sutton was not about to let that happen. His obsession had taken full control. With zero hesitation, he launched himself at Kyle and beat him brutally, like he had no idea who his best friend even was anymore. Sutton finally admitted that he didn't care what Julie felt. He wanted her no matter what, and he would do anything to have her. He then gave Kyle a final blow, rendering him unconscious. Sutton crawled into the machine again and slipped into the spirit world. In his ghost form, he floated right into Julie's apartment like some invisible predator. He started messing with the place, making noises from the bathroom to freak her out. Then he slipped something into her milk, something that would put her to sleep, and waited silently until she drank it. Suddenly, Julie realized the lights had gone out. The doors wouldn't open. Then a knife flew through the air, missing her by inches. That was when real terror kicked in. She whispered Kyle's name as the world spun and her body gave in. She passed out right there on the floor. At the same time, back in his garage, Kyle had woken up and was digging through Sutton's computer. The files were filled with creepy photos of Julie, taken without her ever knowing. It was like proof of everything Kyle had feared. Sutton was not just messed up, he was dangerous, obsessive, and completely out of control. Kyle didn't waste a second. He FaceTimed Julie, and to his shock, she somehow answered, half-conscious, barely holding on. He tried to warn her, told her it was Sutton and to get out of there as soon as possible. But before she could move, she fainted again. Sutton had returned to his body, picked Julie up and dragged her away. He stuffed her inside the cursed coffin and disappeared into the night. Kyle raced to Julie's apartment, but he was already too late. He saw Sutton's truck peeling away and the coffin in the back. That was all he needed. Kyle jumped into his car and gunned it, trying to guess where Sutton would go. Sutton had tied her up, leaving her half-dressed and unconscious. He was smiling like a lunatic as he promised to show her what true power looked like. Julie woke up enough to fight back, swinging at him, hitting him in the face, but Sutton didn't even flinch. His body meant nothing to him anymore. He had gone beyond it. The machine had changed everything. He believed he was something more than human now. Meanwhile, Kyle burst into the building, yelling for Julie at the top of his lungs. Sutton heard him. He dragged the coffin to the roof and hid it there, planning to finish what he started. Kyle kept searching for Sutton, and he suddenly appeared. Now something was different as Kyle could actually see him in ghost mode. Sutton had made the afterlife music loop longer. It had given him more time and abilities in ghost form. He had learned how to touch things, throw punches, and hurt people. He was now a ghost who could fight, and he struck Kyle hard. Kyle woke up with a jolt and heard Julie's faint voice from somewhere in the building. He ran toward the sound, but it was a trap. Sutton had planned it perfectly. Back inside the apartment, Sutton stood over Julie with a twisted grin. He wasn't just obsessed anymore. He was unrecognizable, completely consumed by evil. Now armed with telekinesis, he grabbed a candle and used it to torture Julie just to hear her scream. She begged him to stop, terrified and broken, but Sutton didn't care. At the same time, Kyle was trapped but refused to give up. He crawled through a dusty ventilation shaft, using every ounce of strength he had left, desperate to stop Sutton. He burst onto the rooftop and spotted the coffin, but right in his path stood the terrifying spirit of death. Kyle didn't even flinch. He pushed forward, walking straight through the ghost, not afraid to die if it meant saving Julie. Meanwhile, Sutton was getting worse by the second. still having his way with her. That's when Kyle finally reached the coffin. He yanked Sutton's body out of it and dragged him to the ground, determined to end it all. Without hesitating, Kyle soaked the coffin in gasoline, planning to burn the evil thing forever. But Sutton snapped back to life and charged at him. They crashed into each other, throwing hit after hit, and Kyle quickly realized he was losing. Sutton was stronger, smarter, and more brutal. He even got his hands around Kyle's neck and started choking him out. Kyle, nearly blacking out, pulled out his gun and aimed it right at his old friend's chest. His hands were shaking. He didn't want to shoot him, not really. So instead, Kyle turned and fired into the coffin, setting the whole thing on fire. Enraged, Sutton lost his mind. He grabbed Kyle and tried to throw him off the edge. Kyle dangled by his fingers, barely holding on, but Sutton started stamping his hands, excited to kill him. Then from across the rooftop, a gunshot rang out. Julie, freed from her restraints, had picked up the gun. She fired twice, hitting Sutton in the neck and shoulder. The force knocked him off balance. Kyle pulled himself back up and lunged at him with everything he had. The two fought one last time, and in the struggle, Sutton lost his footing. He slipped and fell off the rooftop. As his body fell, Sutton's spirit tore free. For a brief second, he smiled, thinking he had escaped, but death was already waiting for him. Without mercy, it grabbed him and dragged his soul straight down into the burning depths of hell. The fire swallowed the coffin completely. The cursed machine was gone, turned to ashes. No one would ever use it again. Kyle scooped up the last scraps of the spirit machine and headed home. On the road, he spotted police cars and saw Marcus and his partner being taken away in handcuffs. Justice had finally caught up with them. Before going home, Kyle made one last stop. He visited the old woman who had warned him about everything. Kyle told her that he should have burned the coffin like she told, then handed her the bag of remains. As she reached out, the bag passed right through her hand and fell to the ground. That was when Kyle realized the truth. She wasn't human. She was a spirit too, trapped in the world just like the others. Now that the coffin was destroyed, her soul was finally free. She faded peacefully, leaving Kyle standing in silence. Still with Julie by his side, he got in his car and peacefully drove home.